The News Nation is following exclusive new developments in the Trayvon Martin shooting case. Grio.com managing editor Joanne Reed is reporting that Sanford police chief, along with the state attorney, both made the call not to charge George Zimmerman with a crime the night of the shooting. This comes as a report of the Miami Herald claims the lead investigator on that case originally wanted Zimmerman arrested in Trayvon Martin's death. Now, meantime, Congressman was kicked off the House floor this morning after putting on a hoodie in honor of Trayvon Martin. Congressman Bobby Rush out of Illinois was asked to stop talking after taking off his jacket. You see it there, putting on that hoodie as well as sunglasses.
Just because someone wears a hoodie does not make them a hoodlum. I urge all who hear these words to heed these lessons. May God bless Trayvon Martin's soul.
Also today, the man who claims he's a friend of shooter George Zimmerman, he's making the rounds on TV shows, defended his relationship with Zimmerman. Here's what happened just a short time ago when he spoke with my colleague, Thomas Roberts.
One thing, though, that we want to play is Charles Blow talking to you last night about...
Again, that interview had nothing to do with George and Trayvon.
But it has everything to do about what you know about the man that you're trying to defend, because you weren't there at this shooting.
And
but
neither was anyone else, and that's the problem.
About who George Zimmerman is, and you're trying to defend a man that no one else is showing up to defend. Not even his own parents have come out for an interview yet.
And the major twist in the case, the report that the lead investigator in the case wanted manslaughter charges filed against Zimmerman came, as I mentioned that last night. Now there's word that the call was made by higher-ups the night of the shooting, the very night of the shooting, not to file any charges. Joining me now from Sanford is Joanne Reed, MSNBC contributor, managing editor of thegrio.com. Joanne, you have this exclusive information. Give us more details, please.
Well, Tamron, what we already knew is that the state attorney's office advised the police department on the night of the shooting that there was not sufficient grounds to charge George Zimmerman with the killing of Trayvon Martin. But what we learned, and what I learned exclusively early this morning, was that it was Wolfinger. It was the state attorney who is over this county who made that decision after consulting with the police chief, then police chief Bill Lee, and Robert O'Connor, who was in charge of investigations for the Sanford Police Department. We hadn't heard that before because Wolfinger, you'll recall, at one point he was going to be the state attorney investigating this case. So when police sent that case up to him, he, if this is all true, presumably knew he had already made the decision not to arrest Zimmerman, overruling the homicide investigator who, after talking to Zimmerman, decided he didn't believe his story and filed an affidavit to that account.
Joanne, also, what is happening behind the scenes? Obviously, when you have a report like this, that the lead investigator made this recommendation and now the exclusive information you've been able to uncover, what is the police department saying, if anything, today?
Well, the police department is not talking, Tamron. That's one thing that is definitely not happening here in Sanford. Every piece of information, everyone is being routed up to Angela Corey's office, the state attorney from a neighboring county who is now in charge of the investigation. But I think what's significant here is that we did see State Attorney Wolfinger recuse himself. He wrote a letter to Governor Rick Scott saying that he wanted to avoid the appearance of conflict of interest. That was never explained. But if he was actually on the scene, something that would be unusual for a state attorney to do, if he actually came to the scene or to the police department, consulted with the chief, and that they really made the call to, quote, cut George Zimmerman loose, then he should have never taken that case. And the fact that he recused himself would sort of round this out and would make that make sense. But now the question is whether or not the police department, the actual investigator, they ever acted on an attempt to get a charge against Zimmerman. That's not clear. But of course, as you said, the Miami Herald is saying that there was at least a request for an arrest warrant.
All right, Joanne Reed, thank you very much. So how does this new information about the police initially wanting, or at least one lead investigator wanting Zimmerman charged, how does this impact where we are now? Joining me now, Miami criminal defense attorney, also former U.S. attorney Kendall Coffey. Kendall, it's great to see you again. Help me understand here. The state attorney made the decision the night of the shooting, the killing of Trayvon Martin. Is that usual business?
It's not inconceivable, but all of this is startling, especially when we examine the fact that early on we were basically told that there was never any consideration given to charging Zimmerman, that it was an open and shut self-defense case, supposedly. Now we're hearing something very, very different. According to these reports, the lead investigator, the person on the scene, the person that normally law enforcement would say is in the best position to assess whether or not there's probable cause and arrest. He apparently was effectively overruled by people sitting back at the office. It does happen, but it certainly raises a lot of questions.
So what question does it raise? Does it say that, or are you asking if the Sanford Police Department is incompetent? The question many others have asked, is this a cover-up? What question, as the experienced top legal person in the state of Florida, what is the main question you have? 30 days after Trayvon Martin was killed, we're now learning this critical information about this lead investigator's analysis of the crime scene and what he thinks should have happened.
Well, the most obvious thing it tells us is there is now going to be a thorough investigation, not only of what happened that night, but also an investigation of the investigation by Sanford Police and the State Attorney's Office. But from my standpoint, one of the big concerns is how can you so quickly dismiss what the lead investigator said, where you have somebody dead, an unarmed somebody who was killed by somebody with a gun. And if that decision was going to be made so quickly, they better be darn ready to show a detailed file of all the other steps they took before they overruled the judgment, the professional judgment of the person in the best position to determine whether or not there was probable cause to arrest George Zimmerman.
Kendall, all of those are obviously relevant legal questions. What I'm about to ask you about now, I'm not even sure if it's relevant at this point, but you've got this individual who's out. He says he's George Zimmerman's friend, and then he said he was an associate of George Zimmerman's family. Nonetheless, he's making the rounds on a lot of shows. I want to play two clips from Lawrence O'Donnell's show last night on The Last Word with Zimmerman, who is so far the only person, Zimmerman's friend, who's so far the only person who's coming out defending him. Let's play both of those clips, please.
George Zimmerman learned from his mistakes and grew from them.
What mistakes did George Zimmerman tell you about that, and what did he tell? How did he tell you he grew from his mistakes?
I'm just saying from what I have seen, the person that I know, the George Zimmerman I know, was not the George Zimmerman who was arrested in 2005. And I wouldn't put myself on the line like this if I didn't know in my heart that George Zimmerman was in a life or death struggle. I wouldn't be here. I would not be risking myself.
How do you know that in your heart? How do you know in your heart?
Have you ever had a gut feeling?
You were not there.
Have you ever had a gut feeling?
So this is a gut
feeling. Were you there?
So this is not admissible in any court.
Were you there?
No,
So, Kendall, you've been a prosecutor, you've been a defense attorney. If you are George Zimmerman's attorney, would you at some point contact this alleged friend and say, you're not helping the situation here? What is your motive here?
I would have called him a few days ago. Enough already. And you understand that part of defense strategy sometimes, because remember, you can't put George Zimmerman on the camera, is to use surrogates. But this is becoming an unhelpful distraction. It just kind of keeps feeding emotion and public discussion and controversy. So if I were a defense lawyer, I'd say, sit down, go quiet. You've had your 15 minutes of fame. Let's move on.
Is it likely Oliver is acting on his own, or do you believe that Zimmerman's attorneys would at this point be using this guy whose story changes with every interview as a surrogate for them?
Well, somebody connected him up with the press. I don't know for a fact, but my instinct and speculation, intelligent speculation, is a defense lawyer did it initially. It may have gotten out of his control at this point, but it's not helping George Zimmerman, that's for sure.
All right, Kendall Coffey, thank you so much for reacting to the latest news, exclusive information from Joanne Reed. Thank you.